Global Order. I'm Hindol Sengupta. I actually convinced Abhishek Chaudhari and Surabhi Tomar, both students at the moment of public policy at Harvard's Kennedy School, also Mason Fellows, to have a conversation with me on Global Order today, even though it's quite late at the night in Boston at the moment for them, because I wanted to talk to them about something they have done, which I think is quite important. Only days after the terrible, dastardly Pahalgam attack, which killed 26 people, Howard's Lakshmi Mittal South Asia Institute organized a Pakistan conference in which several participants actually went on record and spoke about their anti India opinion with the context and after Pahalgam and the terror attack. Now, this caused a rage and uproar both in America and in India, and it required somebody to do something about it. And this was done by these two mid-career students. They are now here to talk to me about why they did this, what prompted them, why this was so urgent, and I welcome them. Welcome, Surabhi and Abhishek.
Thank you.
Namaskar. Dhanyavad, Hindolji.
Namaskar. Let me begin then with the question. What prompted you to take this step? I know that you wrote a letter to Lakshmi Mittal himself, the billionaire entrepreneur who actually funded and gave the endowment for the South Asia Institute.
Uh,
Hindolji, what happened is we saw a horrific faith-based terror attack in Pahalgam, as the rest of the world saw it, where Hindu civilians were executed after being asked to prove their religion. As Harvard students, we could not ignore that pain. We actually first, as a first step, we had set out to solicit solidarity from everybody across the university. And we got a lot of solidarity. Around 65 country represented us with certain signatures and condolence messages. That is where it was made clear to us that this Pakistani conference is happening, and we didn't have a problem with the Pakistani conference just by itself, but by the Pakistani officials who were coming, some of whom had publicly defended the ideological basis of the attackers. And they were being invited to speak at Harvard just within a few days of this attack having happened. And there was no institutional acknowledgement of that violence. That was a problem. So we acted because we believe in Harvard's commitment to human dignity, justice, and moral leadership. When other communities face racism or religious hate, Harvard rightly responds. Harvard has made statements, it brings out memorials, but when Hindu and Indian students have this problem, we also deserve the same. So we sent out two letters. One was to the Harvard leadership asking for public support and solidarity, and for certain other actions that we will talk about later. And one was to the Honorable Secretary of State Marco Rubio requesting a visa denial for the implicated Pakistani officials. What we are asking for is consistency, clarity, and courage in how our institutions in the US, especially Harvard, where we are studying, respond to religious terrorism and do not give a platform to officials who support or are complicit in indirectly or directly in terrorism.
Sheikh, you want to add something to that?
thank you, Hindol, for having us. And when Surabhi said that we wrote this letter, then both of our names are on the letter. But then it also involves a lot of students who are supportive to this cause, who are silent supporter, because as we all know, things are not that straightforward when you are talking from such campuses. So what we thought we should do, and we did that because it was a faith-based massacre. 26 people, 28 people, including two international tourists, they were killed based on their identity, They were asked about their religion. They were asked to recite the Islamic prayer, and based on that, they were killed point blank in front of their family, in front of their wives and children. And wives were told to go back and tell this to Prime Minister Modi. So this was all frustrating. This is all anguish. So we just thought that we should do something, and then we had a condolence meeting. We had a condolence messages from many international students, and we wrote these letters to authorities.
Let's
Yeah,
talk a little
Hindolji,
bit.
I will
Yeah,
clarify on
please.
that again, what Abhishek ji said. He's absolutely right. The letter, even though everybody keeps saying it is from Abhishek ji and me, the last line of the letter keeps getting cut because everybody wants to remove our phone numbers. And the last line states that it is on behalf of concerned students at Harvard. So we have a lot of support and students backing this letter. It's not just the two
And
of us.
not just Harvard students from Harvard, but I am receiving message, and I am sure Surabhi must be receiving also. There are multiple students from various universities in Boston, various universities in New York, Washington, or the western coast of the USA. So just recently, I got a message from a student from Europe. So these are the sentiment echoed by many Indian students, and not just Indian. We have also got a support from non-Indians like Americans, Europeans, Latin American, African. So this is like a global support for the India fight against terrorism.
Southeast Asian, Chinese, Japanese,
Yeah,
basically the
yeah,
entire world,
So
yes.
overall, very widespread support. Talk to
yeah,
me a little.
absolutely.
Talk to me a little bit about what happened when you first sent out those letters. What were the responses that you received? Abhishek, you want to take that?
Uh, Yeah, we wrote those letters, and then we received a communication from dean of our school, and we are talking with him. So beyond that, there is not much of a response. But yes, the dean office contacted, and we are talking with them. But then you can see in entire media, the center which hosted this conference, the Mittal Center, the center in news, they were hosting it, and it was pre-decided for before Pahalgam attack. Obviously, they issued a clarification, and they are trying to distance itself, but there can be some kind of a sensitivity to the cause. At least there can be some kind of acknowledgement to the attack happened, the act of terrorism happened, and I am not sure. But Surbi, you may like to add.
So we have received a lot of support from the community after these letters were sent out. And by community, firstly, I mean the students. Secondly, unofficially, professors have also reached out at Harvard. Uh, Thirdly, the institute, as an institute, has started conversation with us, and I feel in the next couple of weeks those will be resolved. We have three asks as we have listed in the letter itself. The asks go
For
beyond
us,
just.
could you repeat for us what those asks are?
Yes, I'll get to it. One
Yeah,
second, I'll just finish.
sure.
Uh, Then we are also seeing support from the wider Boston community, as Abhishek ji mentioned. That involves the students, the local Indian organizations, the local Hindu organizations. Those are the major ones. Then recently, in the last couple of days, we have started seeing support from across US, some from the wider Indian community, and some from the wider non-Indian community. Groups are reaching out and just sending us messages of solidarity and saying that they stand with Hindus and with India in the fight against terrorism.
Would you want to add something? But before you do, Surabhi, take us through the three asks that you all have.
Yes. So the three asks that we are doing is, one is that we were kindly requesting Harvard to come out with a statement of solidarity or like a support for the wider Indian community, as they have done in the past for other communities. Second is we want more support, what comes under the DEI, uh, but that institute has been changed now. Uh, just emotional support for the Indian students here who are going through a lot. There are students who have families who were visiting, and students who had families who were going to visit, and extended families who might have been in that area. So we want emotional support, which Harvard does provide through its offices, set up in a more professional way for these students. And the third ask is that we want more Indian studies and Hindu studies to be brought about in the institution. See, the opposite of love is not hate, the opposite of love is apathy. And what is happening right now is that there's a general apathy towards Hindus and towards Indians. The Indian studies a lot of good things or bad things, whatever it is, are not being studied, whether it is conflict management or negotiation from the Indian perspective, and case studies coming from India are not being studied at the Kennedy School. So these are the three asks.
Sheikh, would you like to add something to this specifically on why do you think this occurs? Why do you think this apathy that Surabhi is talking about? Why, what is your sense now that you've spent some time in America, time at Harvard specifically? Why do you think this apathy exists, and what can be done to change it? Because there does seem to be a mood of change. A lot of students, as both of you are also saying, are pushing back against this. Now, all of us know that this has been happening for a long time. We saw this happen, for instance, after the Pulwama attacks. But there seems to be a mood for change. But why does this apathy exist? And do you think that a lot of people are now pushing to change it?
Yeah, absolutely. There is a strong apathy, and as we all know, as we all discuss, there is some kind of a incentive for victimization in in this kind of ecosystem. You get admission if you cry on something, if you complain on something, if you present yourself as a victim from India. So there is a incentive for it. That is one aspect. But another aspect is there is a, if I may propose a term, I call it as a democratic racism. So if a country like country like India, a successful democracy, is is charting its own path of development, it's charting its own path of raising per capita income, having an inclusive development. So it is making some people uncomfortable. So they are not ready to accept that a democracy from global south, a democracy like India, can do something good. So the debates and all discussions and discourse over here, they are trapped in a poverty, in the new term they invented, like a democratic backsliding, then in a majority minority, the binaries. So the debates are just trapped into those. But beyond these humanities ecosystem, when you go to business ecosystem, when you go to technology ecosystem, the things are different. So there it is a larger pushback happening. You can see many Indian students, many students from Indian origin who are based in US. They are pushing their story. They are putting things confidently. But in humanities, there is a lag. But yes, there is a acceptability in Harvard. And when you ask about what can be done, is we should be ready with our story, not playing any victimhood card, and not to have a complainant type of attitude, but to tell our story positively with a lot of aspiration, with a lot of hopes. And I can sense from my stay of a little than 1 year that India is lot to give to many countries, including global south, including even Europe, including USA. Our democratic experience, our development experience, our technology experience, our digital governance experience, and even our experience with the conflict resolution, our conflict management, or our fight against terrorism. So things are changing, but we need to push hard.
Surabhi, let's take the conversation to you. What happens next, according to you? What would be the next steps in this conversation now that a certain, if I may say so, awakening on this issue has happened? What happens next?
Hindol, we value free speech and academic freedom. So let's be very clear about that. Uh, but giving a platform to officials who endorse religiously motivated violence is not freedom, that is legitimization. So, what we are hoping for is that Harvard should publicly condemn the Pahalgam attacks and support the impacted students, as I already mentioned. From the U.S. government, I should mention that the current government has come out in support of India very strongly. They have made tweets and public statements also in support of India and supporting any action that we will be taking as allies. However, I will add that I hope that the US government will prevent the US soil from becoming a stage for state enabled terror apologists, which is what is happening over here. And the outcome we are hoping for later on is a moral clarity, not just from Harvard, but from all institutes, whether they are think tanks or media centers or the government centers or the civic society in general. Moral clarity, institutional support, and a serious reckoning about religiously targeted violence. Where is this violence coming from? Who is funding it? If we can start thinking in those terms and stop apologizing just because we are afraid of calling out the religion of a certain terrorist, that is what we should be hoping as the outcome.
Excellent. Abhishek, any final comments on the change that is required in universities like Harvard around the world, especially focused on South Asia, on India? Many people believe that a lot of these South Asia departments, in a sense, require a much deeper, richer, more nuanced understanding of what's really happening in India and the change that India is seeing, which is really once in a lifetime sort of change, but that understanding is perhaps not percolating deep enough. And what could we all do in a sense to push that understanding deeper?
Uh, it's a larger point, Hindol. If you allow me to have a 2-3 minutes, then
Sure,
I'll
please
I'll
go ahead.
go back a little. I'll
Please.
go back a little back into the history. Like as you know, the Article 370, which is a temporary provision to in the Indian Constitution regarding the status of Jammu and Kashmir, it was abrogated on 5th August of 2019. So it was the biggest geopolitical movement in subcontinent history since nuclear test conducted by India and Pakistan both. So what it did is it fundamentally altered the Jammu Kashmir, reshaping its legal, political, and psychological landscape. It also altered the map of Jammu and Kashmir. So earlier if you just observe the earlier map and the map now, the Jammu Kashmir was like at the crown of India, and now Kashmir is a smaller portion, and then Ladakh become a bigger portion of it. So, and then that in last 5 years there has been election which successfully conducted with 70% voting. Violence has been reduced by 70%. But in because of the abrogation and because of the developments after that, Pakistan and its long nurtured proxies, Lashkar-e-Toiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed, they are facing a deep legitimacy crisis. They are unable to justify their existence in face of this democratic and developmental integration, which is reducing which has reduced the conflict. So, and at the same time, because of the India's diplomacy and international pressure and the FATF, these groups were forced to go underground, but their ideology, it's not vanished. So they instead they re-emerged into new forms, and which is somewhat tailored to appeal Western academics and attract their sensibilities. Now Lashkar-e-Taiba is rebranded as the Resistance Front, and Jaish-e-Mohammed is rebranded as a People's Anti-Fascist Front. So you can sense the words like resistance and anti-fascist. So these fronts are deliberately avoiding Islamic names, Islamic identities. Instead, they have adopted the vocabulary of liberal woke discourse, and if you see, this is an the Pahalgam attack. It was a bigger on scale, but in last few years there were sporadic attacks killing Hindu businessmen, killing Hindu. There was one hotelier killed. There was one jeweler killed, and in every of the attack, the message, the if you see the messaging of the this terrorist group, they use the terms like a settler colonial state, indigenous resistance, and they're framing terror attack as an activism. So this is very elite discourse, and the institution, it's appealing to the institution in the West, and this is where the significance of place like Harvard comes in. The Pakistani conference organized here is the headline is to promote business, technology, innovation, to present Pakistan in a positive way. But let it be clear, this is not just a conference. It's a whitewash. It's a whitewash to the record of the state-sponsored terrorism, and re-legitimize the discredited ideology under the grab of dialogue. This is kind of a soft power serving the hard agenda. So, and as I gather and I saw a few news reports, the entire discussion of the conference was somewhere focused on the India-Pakistan war. So they are here. The agenda is to target U.S. Decision makers, U.S. policy makers, that you should pressurize India. They are acting against terrorism, so they can act against us. So the entire attempt was a completely different under the garb of business, innovation, and something like that. So we have to understand this basic premise before moving forward. So it needed a hard push, not just about the terrorism, but about entire discourse and entire narrative kind of a thing. So that's what I'll say.
This hard push to a degree has been given by both of you too. And of course, you're right. I mean, some of us have been researching this for a while on the narrative shift, how extremist, especially Islamist groups, now adopt what would be called a sort of woke terminology. And this is being researched by many people, including me. And you're absolutely right. Last comments, Surabhi. Now that Abhishek has put this context around this discussion, final points on what you think might happen next and going forward for both of you. When do you finish in Harvard? What do you hope to do next, and so on and so forth?
Thank you, Hindol. I would like to build on Abhishek ji's comment about what needs to be changed at these institutes, because this is one of our core burning points at our heart. The biggest problem at institutes in the West, especially a place like Harvard or any of the other Ivy Leagues, is ignorance about India. There are many centers and chairs that are running and speaking about India, but they come from a large place of ignorance. People like us, all of us who have worked on ground in all over and across India, speaking with all the different communities, we realize that these people at Harvard are not bringing the context and are not even aware of the context that is there in India. India is the largest democracy in the world, and I will say and argue that it's the most robust democracy in the world. And we are not speaking about that. We come from it from the point of some political speakers talking about it. There are many examples of water management. We don't talk about that. There's an increase on afforestation, and one of the best cleanliness changes in the world that has happened in, say, a town like Indore, and we are not studying that or researching that. How do different communities with multiple languages stay together and are still having one single identity of being Indian, uh, despite different religions, different languages, different racial identities? We are still the same Indians. How is that happening? These are research questions that need to be researched and answered. And that is what is missing at Harvard and at other Ivy League institutes. Um, that is something I would like to change. The more and more research that can go into India, the better it will be for all of us.
Amazing. All the power to both of you. And I hope you take this kind of research forward. Obviously, a global collective of people working on these issues is required to build a full network to push these ideas, very valuable and very important, forward. I think I absolutely agree with both of you. A lot of India's achievements have been taken so for granted, primarily by even Indians, that we have never been able to really talk about it. Even before anybody in the West or anywhere else takes it for granted, we ourselves often take it for granted. And therefore, we need to do a lot more to change this. And indeed, change has begun in some ways by the letters you wrote challenging some of the activities in Harvard, especially at the Lakshmi Mittal South Asia Institute, which hosted a Pakistan conference where there was an attempt to whitewash the dastardly terror attack that killed so many innocent people in Pahalgam in Kashmir. Thanks very much, Abhishek and Surabhi, for joining me today on Global Order to talk about this. I'm sorry I cut into your sleep time. No, obviously, Ivy League students really value this sleep time. I apologize for that, but thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you for
Hindolji.
having us.
Shubhratri.
Thank you and Shubhratri.